Okay, great.
So we're live.
So we're in the green room. Do we make it? Anyway, listen, we'll get there. So I guess Ohio State is going to have a game. Reg, I heard this morning. I was so disappointed that.
Welcome to the green room, everybody.
Good, we're in. Great. We're back in live.
We're live. Okay.
Reggie, welcome.
Glad to be here, Barry and Ruta. Nice to see you both.
Well, you need to do the introduction.
I will. Listen, we're honored. Well, you know, it's always kind of a fade into the green room. Listen, we're honored to have Reggie Williams. I got to get my Browns, thing in here, and Bengals' best ever linebacker, in my humble opinion. But so much more. And Reggie, you're just a perfect guest to have this morning, Sarasota resident, and really living the exact same life that we all are living right now. So listen, it's the green room for a reason. We always start with a little politics. And of course, there's nobody better than Reggie. Reggie actually served in politics. I'll let him tell the story in Cincinnati during his football career.
Yes, I was a Cincinnati city councilman starting in 1988. I was officially sworn into office 2 months before our preseason training camp for 1988. That 1988 training camp, everyone thought was going to be a real distraction. I write about it in my book, Resilient by Nature. And in fact, we went from a 6-10 record to a 12-4 record, and to be the AFC representatives in Super Bowl 23. It was a fantastic year.
I didn't realize that, actually. That's fantastic. So that focus and that leadership, Reggie, was essential.
Well, I think when you're playing for the whole city, you know, beyond your teammates and your coaches, then it does send a different signal. And so certainly we're at a time where we need more clarity from our leaders in politics, starting from the top. You know, the House of Representatives have recently voted in legislation that would legalize cannabis, which is really good. We need the Senate to follow through. We need the president's office to also sign this legislation. And we need the current president to admit that he is not the current president in the future.
Listen, here we are in Florida. Here we are in Florida with Republican leadership. And listen, our attorney general.
The 18 attorney generals, all 18.
I know,
ridiculous.
But our attorney general doesn't speak for me, okay? And I am appalled. And quite frankly, Reggie, you know, I mean, you can talk treason, sedition, you can talk all kinds of different things, but we rely on the truth and the rule of law and appropriate procedures. And, you know, to me, listen, I know you congratulate me on the Browns, you know, 9-3 season so far. And I think a lot of that is Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski has brought new leadership, okay, to the Browns. And we can only hope and pray that President-elect Biden does the same thing. I think every bit of how these Republicans have acted in this transitional phase is so disturbing, because we're in crisis here. People are dying. We're over 3,000 now deaths from COVID yesterday, a true 9/11 every single day circumstance.
For like 4 days
and these people want to stand in the way of a transition. What president or what leader says, I want to block the next guy doing well for the people? I don't understand the concept.
Somebody who's a narcissist who doesn't want to give up his power.
But those that follow him have no excuse at this point.
They do not have any excuse, you know.
I think they're afraid, honestly. From what I think, either he has dirt on some of them, or they're just afraid for some reason. They're scared to death of Trump. They are. There's no excuse for the McConnells, for the Lindsey Grahams, for the Ted Cruzes. He's a constitutionalist, and listen to what he's doing now. My God.
No, we're going to have lying Ted Cruz, defending Trump in front of the Supreme Court. It's lunacy. TG for C. Thank goodness for cannabis and and those other mindful and other ways that people are getting through 2020. And Reggie, listen, I love your follow on Facebook. We're going to talk about your book a little bit. It's so important in this day and age, but I also love the walks that you take in the evening on Sarasota Bay and the view from your place. It's a peaceful thing. And I know that at this point, you're like the rest of us, just navigating through 2020 the best you can.
Well, we have to support each other. I mean, we have lived through so much division that has been really put on us, from the very beginning, from the very first day of his inauguration. When he said, I had the biggest crowd ever, he's forcing the world to lie with him on the very first day. And that's criminal. And the lies have just been compounded for 4 straight years. I mean, the impeachment proceedings could have and should have been successful. The Mueller investigation had so much merit, and yet this guy will not leave. He won't admit to the harm that he is doing to democracy. And this is a critical blow because his attack on democracy is an attack on racial justice. It's an attack on our opportunity for all Americans to seek equal opportunity under interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. And for someone to have that kind of, as Rhoda said, narcissism, that egotism. I've met this guy, and I'm a Dartmouth guy. He's from Penn. He's supposed to be an Ivy League, and we're supposed to be able to, within the realms of the Ivy League, be gentlemen, in the pursuit of knowledge. When I met him and extended my hand to shake Donald Trump's hand, he turned away from me.
No way.
And I'm not kidding. This is in New York at the New York heliport on the west side. I'm there with Bob Silliman, who's the owner of the New York, New Jersey Knights. Obviously, Trump has a helicopter, and that's where we met. And Bob Silliman, who, owned a bunch of radio stations and eventually became the owner of American Idol and, the Elvis Presley Graceland estate. He's the one that introduced me. So he had every reason, in this private space to be a human being.
Yeah,
and he was
human.
That's what I'm talking about. So and Ron DeSantis, for him to call a raid on one of his people who was trying to bring more clarity to how many infections we have in the state of Florida. How safe are we in the state of Florida?
If you think about, they're blocking the scientists and the ones that are telling the truth, and they're putting guns on her and her children. I mean, that was a disgrace of disgraces. And talk about like systems. I'm like, it's a throwback to whether you see it in communism or something. You don't see that in America where somebody's raiding someone's house because they're telling the truth. I mean, it's ridiculousness.
No, we're seeing a lot of things.
DeSantis has got to go.
We're seeing a lot of things we don't see in America.
Yeah.
How do you think we get it back together, Reggie? I mean, listen. And I'm going to surprise you in a few moments when we transition over to our sports and cannabis discussion. And I'll cue that one down in a few moments. But in the old days, we would bond over our sports, right? And I'm a Clevelander. And if there's one thing that every Clevelander can say right now is, damn it, we're happy about our Cleveland Browns.
Yes,
right?
You should be.
For sure. So we used to bond in certain ways as a country. And even at sports now, there's people that won't follow the NBA or the NFL because Colin Kaepernick made the stand that he made, right? And there's still people that in NASCAR with the Confederate flag and everything. Even sports have divisions now. Where can we really look to, Reggie, to try and get it back together as a country? I view, President-elect Biden as a possible healing force, because I think even through all this craziness, he's attempted to navigate the waters of normalcy that I think the vast majority of us want back.
Well, I think yesterday I was watching CNN and Andrew Cuomo made a really good point. Somehow, usually American tragedies, unfortunately, they bring people together. Like if you take 9/11 or you take those kind of events, the Americans come together and they're not viewing COVID as a unifier. They're putting it as a political division, which is weird because in truth, COVID doesn't care if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, doesn't care if you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, it doesn't matter. It's a disease. And yet people aren't unifying behind even COVID because our leader, he could have used this as a great unifier. Fight COVID, unite as a country. But this guy is the furthest thing from wanting
He
to
would have won in a
unify.
landslide, quite frankly, if he would have done that.
Yeah,
That's
he
the
probably
scary
would have,
thing.
actually, so maybe that's
I agree.
No, I mean, it is. And I fundamentally get confused about the stupidity of him and the narcissism because he won't even listen to what has to be coming to him with better advice than what he's been getting.
Of
you
course,
know.
I mean, you had the Fauci's, you had the Dr.
I know.
Braces, you had, well, his medical personnel of Health and Human Services is not the best person, but that's okay. But he's admitting at least that there's a transition, so that's a good thing. But
So hopefully sports can be a uniter. And I say the Browns winning the Super Bowl would actually be a fantastic thing. Who's more America's team? Although we do love the Bengals, though. Ohio State.
The Bengals
Second.
are on
well, I'm a
hard times.
Bostonian, so unfortunately we have Brady down here and the Patriots suck now.
And
but that's
listen,
okay.
the latest victim of the COVID crisis was the loss of the Ohio State-Michigan game, right? So who was Dartmouth's biggest rival back in your day, Reg?
Oh, our biggest rivalry is with Harvard.
I was gonna say Harvard.
And the Ivy League did not play sports
year.
this fall.
Did not play at all,
They didn't
sure.
play at all.
They did,
Yeah,
and they took the medical advice, and they actually look kind of brilliant right now, considering what's happening in the Big Ten, SEC, almost all of the major colleges. All of them have shown basically a disregard for the health of their players and their coaches and their fans. I mean, the amount of infections that are prevalent throughout the college campuses now because of, trying to play football is something that is really, really, really devastating. It's adding to, the death counts. I mean, I love the game. I couldn't imagine not being able to play the game, but worse, I can't imagine being dead because of playing a game.
or killing your grandmother or your
Right.
grandfather or someone like that. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Plus, listen, there may be some longer term effects from COVID. It's always been one of my concerns, as I like to say, we didn't know that chicken pox would cause herpes zoster later or shingles. Same thing with mono, chronic mono, Epstein-Barr viral syndrome. So believe me, this virus, and we know that there's long haulers,
There's long haulers.
to
There's still
that
effects
extent.
always in the lungs.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're doing great, and your mom as well. Listen, a little update from my home. And you know what, Don? Let's transition over to our sports and medicine thing. Reg, I got a surprise. Yeah, I had Don pull a little fun thing. But anyway, listen, Patty tested negative yesterday. Her mom, okay, and I haven't seen my wife, everybody, in 10 days, just so you know, okay? Her mom was discharged from the rehab facility with COVID, unfortunately, does not have any symptoms. Maddie at 88 is
Still
great.
no symptoms. That's awesome.
Did test positive yesterday still.
That's
So
great.
Patty's
It does
negative. Her mom is positive. Patty fell on the sword, is taking care of her mom, is doing great. So listen, it's a strange virus, but Reggie's right. We have way too many cases. We don't know the ultimate outcomes. All right, you ready with that, Don?
Yep.
All right, listen, I'm going to do my old NFL theme music while we
I
transition.
want to hear this. Let's hear this.
No, Reggie will remember the old days NFL films. Da, 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 da.
I'm not an NFLer,
So they can see it, Don, but we can't.
Yep.
Okay, great, because I know, Reggie, you're planning Ron Jaworski at a certain point in one of these videos for sure, and he was from Youngstown State. I don't know if you can see it or not.
No, I can see it.
Oh, you can see
yeah,
it. Good. Then you give the commentary.
Yeah, I'm about to jump over Rocky Blyer and proceed to tackle Terry Bradshaw. You're going to see me on the very left on the screen. And that was my rookie year, 1976. This particular play is a safety, a sack on Ron Jaworski. It was the first game in 1987 following the player's strike. I crossed the picket line. As you can see, my teammates didn't care. They were enthusiastic about being on the field again and competing. And that particular season was the season, as bad as it was the season that preceded our last Super Bowl session. This particular play is an interception. Greg Pruitt is going to tackle me, and this is the play that resulted in my first cartilage tear. And I had my life of operations after this. This is my first interception off of left-hand quarterback Jim Zorn. I had 2 broken thumbs in this particular game. It was my second year. I managed to stay in bounds and slide up the sideline. And at that point in time, I expected to get a lot of interceptions for touchdowns, but that ended up being the only one in my whole 14-year career.
Wow.
I had two fumble recoveries for touchdowns, and I had 2 safeties. So in my career, I ended up scoring 22 points.
Wow.
You know?
That's crazy. Wow, Reggie, I had no idea that would be as I'm telling you, that is a jewel of the 60 seconds that I know that I'm going to cherish in this green room forever. Just to hear that commentary out of you, I treasure that. And to think that, but the unique thing is that was the first knee injury that you had that resulted in, describe your experience with cannabis, Reggie, and, not to out you, but, it's well known that you're a cannabis advocate. Of course, it's helped you through your injury circumstance, but that was the first of your knee injuries. And everybody, listen, somebody who uses cannabis as medicine seems to have a pretty darn good memory to me, right?
No,
Pretty much, yeah.
no, I remember it, very, clearly. My cannabis use, as I detailed in the book, Resilient by Nature, began in the early 70s in Flint, Michigan, when all of the heroes, the older guys that taught all of us how to play football, these guys had gone to Vietnam. They had suffered the terrors and the horrors of war, and they had come back from Vietnam. And most of them, if not all of them, were using cannabis as a way to deal with the post-traumatic stress and the pain, and to deal with the memories of the horror that they had just been a part of. And then through college, it was more social, but in the NFL, it became medicine because it's what I utilized every post-game to unwind, to deal with the pain without suffering from the pain, to try to, replay in my mind the game that I had just played and to prepare myself for the week. And now, obviously, I honestly feel it's a benefit to the long-term physical punishment that I've had on my brain. According to many doctors, I'm probably have CTE. It's a devastating thought, but it's about the symptoms. And in dealing with the symptoms, that's why cannabis use now may be the one thing that is allowing me to even have even more functionality mentally than I would have had if I'm not a user.
Can you talk about what CTE is? Because I'm sure some of our viewers probably don't know.
CTE,
chronic traumatic encephalopathy, Reg. I'll help you through that part.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that impacts the brain. You can only discover if you have it by the amount of tau in your brain, which is a sort of discoloring, and it can be discovered at death. I have agreed to donate my brain to the Concussion Legacy Project so that they can validate whether I did or did not have CTE. The inspiration that everyone should have is CTE is not a death sentence. I wrote my book this last year, and if I had CTE, I wrote a best-selling book with CTE. All right.
Well, no, that's why the NFL players and Don and I, looked this up because I wanted to get a little bit of skinny before the show. That's why in the last collective bargaining agreement, of course, cannabinoids were recognized. The NFL is starting to loosen up on all of it. The players absolutely want to take cannabinoids because there is a brain protective thing that's been patented by the government in 2002. We know it. We want the research. We need the research. And I think, the scary thing about CTE, and Reggie's right, it is a diagnosed at autopsy, type of circumstance. MRIs help a little bit, but we've seen so many great players from what was it, Mike Webster, I think, the Steelers center, and I'm sure you butted heads with him a couple times, Reg. I think he was probably the best center ever. Steelers center.
He was a great center, but he was playing during that era where a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers offensive linemen were using steroids, and there were Lyle Alzado, I think, would be the best example of that. A great Denver player who came to the Browns later and of course died very early of a right. And it was probably felt to be steroid induced. You listen to what all you guys went through, Reggie, is just incredible. And, listen, I want you to talk about your book a little bit more because writing a book isn't easy either. But, what's so important is that you have come out in your book and discussed, cannabis as medicine. And we're so appreciative about that. But, once again, I think the book has so much to say about just where we're at right now as a society and the challenges that we face. And listen, it's a great Christmas gift, everybody. Like I said, feel free to tell us a couple stories out of there, Reg, because like I said, writing a book's not easy. I actually had half a book in the can until I lost it on a computer I can't find. So I respect that. No, it's not easy writing a book. No, the book basically originated after I was coming out of the hospital after my 4th knee replacement. I've had 5 knee replacements. And I was doing a community conversation here in Sarasota at Bookstore One, which is a great independent bookstore. And in that audience where I was discussing my life and what I would put in the book if I ever wrote one, was a publishing editor from Post Hill Press. And after my conversation, she came up to me and said, I want to publish this story. And so we do cover a lot of ground. And one of the things that sort of evolved out of writing the book was that some of the experiences in my life were now being dramatized in current reality. The fact that the NBA completed its 2020 season at ESPN Wide World of Sports, the sports complex that I created in 1993, fought through a myriad of corporate rejections to get that approved. And that complex, decades later, is the only way that the NBA is going to complete its season in a pandemic. In my book, I talk about the time that I was stopped by the police. And when I think about George Floyd and the tragedy of his confrontation with the police, there was no difference. In my situation, I'm in Orlando. I'm on the 408, a big, huge highway. And I threw the finger at someone who had cut me off. And that person called 911 and said I had a gun. And they sent the SWAT team after me. They had a helicopter. When I stopped, several police came with their guns all drawn. They threw me out of the car, threw me on the hot asphalt. They handcuffed me behind my back so hard that my wrists were bleeding. And then they put a gun against my temple and looked through my car for a gun, which fortunately, I don't own a gun. And I had to be completely docile. I couldn't complain. I had to completely pliant. And it was one of the most, personally humiliating things you can go through because you are in a life or death situation. If I'd handled myself wrong, I wouldn't be talking to you now. Yeah. And so that kind of police brutality disparity is what all of the protests over this last year were all about. It's real, It can happen to anyone. It can happen to you if you were a vice president at Walt Disney World. It can happen to you if you're an NFL Man of the Year. It happened to you only because of the color of your skin and the fear that the color of my skin causes in some white people, and that's unfortunate. So we all need to come together like you know, Dr. Bear, because you do a great job of ensuring that you treat everyone the same.
Listen, to me, it's, you know, to me, I like to say when you're a four-year-old and you run into preschool for the first time or whatever, you're going to run up to and grab the closest kid that you see. Racism, that's learned behavior. It's so troublesome to me that we continue, you know, generation after generation. I do believe to chip away at the rock. But that rock remains in this country, and listen, that's why we
embedded. That's a sad part. Like,
no, but you saw it with Trump's base.
We saw it in Trump,
the fact that he had
it's
that many voters.
But to me, it's like a
snowball.
snowball.
What 70, 80 million people are standing behind.
Listen, I've never thought of this analogy.
I've
never thought of this analogy before, but pre-Trump, it was almost like the snow was snow on a real cold up north day. When you rolled a snowball down, it didn't collect. But then there's other days that are kind of warmer days, and it's good packing snow. And you start your snowball like this, and then you roll it down the hill, and by the end of the hill, it's like that. That's what the Trump 4 years have been. And we need to get back to looking at each other as Americans, you know, and, you know, Reggie,
but
I think
the race issue, I apologize, but
no,
I don't
please.
think it's ever gone away. It
never has gone away.
It has never gone
Oh, there
away.
was still that snowball there.
It's been there. It's
but the point is, it was rolling through snow that wasn't collecting on the snowball, and now we have a much bigger snowball.
We say that, but we're not. I hate to say this, but we're not, Reggie. Our skin is white. As a Black person, because I have friends, they said it's never gone away. There's been no snowball effect. It's always there as an issue. It's always there as a reminder. It's always there as a stumbling block. It's always there as a comment. It's always, there's something always there. It never has gone away. And it's a tragedy on our Americanism, I think, but it's been here for 200 years and we can't,
400 years.
Even 4, yeah, but we cannot break it. It's a terrible mentality. And my husband, he's from Morocco, and there it's North Africa. You have white people, Black people, brown people, there's no racism because everybody's just there. He came to this country and he was like, oh my God, the racism that exists here is unbelievable. He couldn't believe it. He was like, oh my God, people look at people's skin color here. And I'm like, really? And I didn't see it that way as much. And he's like, trust me, they do. And you live it, Reggie, every day. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you're a vice president, an NFL linebacker, when they pull you over, they cuff you and they will treat you differently than a white Ivy leaguer. They will. Exactly. And it's not right. It's just not right.
And Reggie and I are getting old. Reg, I'm going to be 65 in May, and I think you're a 56er as well. But the point is, you and I are willing to go through the last part of our life and not be loud and not be vocal. And I wish I could give you a hug right now. And after COVID time, we will. Because I just view people like you, that you are the beacon, okay, for people like Ruta and I to continue to listen to your message. And it's young, it's old, but we need to be Americans. I like to say, listen, until they land on the White House lawn with 2 heads and 4 arms, okay, then people will always, these idiots, okay, these racial morons.
But even these,
I don't know what to call them.
But even these labels, like we talk about that. This country loves labels. It's like you're Black, you're white, you're Asian, you're Muslim, you're Christian. Why can't you just all be human? Like we all are human. Like why does it have to be LGBT? Why? Everybody's the same. We're all the same. We wake up the same. We walk the same. We talk the same. We eat the same. I don't get this division. It's like this craziness, and I hate that division. I really do. Reggie, where can we buy your book? Because I really love the story that you just told. So how can we get a hold of your book?
Well, I appreciate it. It's available, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. But if you want a personalized copy, Bookstore One in Sarasota, you can call them, the online, all small letters, it'll be sarasodabooks.com, or their phone number is 914-365-7900.
And we can
for,
put that up later too, right?
yeah, and I'd appreciate it because I love personalized books for people assigned also by Jared Bell, who I collaborated. He is the NFL beat writer for USA Today. And the forward is written by Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawk megastar quarterback whose father, Harry B. Wilson, was one of my best friends at Dartmouth College. So I
for
appreciate
all of the listeners out there, great Christmas idea. You get a personalized signing. This is fantastic gift for all the sports fans in your life, and he's local. So if you're from Sarasota area, Venice, and you have this personalized gift, I think it makes a great gift. The other thing I wanted to ask you about your book. So like when you were writing it, did you have like a lot of up and down emotions? Was it difficult for you personally as a journey to write everything down that you went through?
Well, what happened as I'm writing the book, I had just come off my 4th knee replacement. I was able to rehab myself off of that. I was able to go to New York to be recognized during halftime of the Dartmouth-Princeton game, which was the official 150th game of college football. And I flew back home to Sarasota and then broke my hip. And
that's right.
Well, resilient. Sure. You have to be resilient. And that broken hip is what I had when I wrote my book. So I wrote it with a broken hip, but my broken hip fixed a chronic sciatica nerve problem that I've had for over 12 years. So it actually did me more good than I could have imagined.
Yeah, I remember that, Reg. And listen, Reg is a great follow too, everybody on Facebook. One of the greatest pictures recently, Reg, was you and President Obama on the bestseller look at the bookstore side by side. Because seriously, you're a similar beacon to our former president for common sense and logic and deep thought. And I so cherish your friendship and the friendship of you with our clinic. And it's every time we have you on, it's so special and we so much appreciate it.
And maybe post-COVID, we can actually do like a cool book signing either here or somewhere like that.
I'd love to do a book signing down at Compassionate Cannabis.
Yeah,
or
awesome.
Compassionate Cannabis Clinic, for
that
sure.
would be awesome. Well, post-COVID, it'd be a great draw. I think that would be phenomenal.
And listen, I think you're one of our first repeat guests in the green room too, because we had him in when we had Eric Range and this and that.
That's right. You're the first two-timer.
Yeah, in the green room.
Well, thank you for having me. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and please go online and buy Reggie's book.
Stay healthy. Stay safe.
Thank you.